This is the third Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
Welcome everybody to our public hearing. This is a notice of public hearing on a resolution to vacate a city street. Today is January 16, 2018, and I call this public hearing to order. You gonna take roll?
Sure.
Sandy will take roll.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
At 10 present, we have a quorum.
The next is the purpose of the hearing. The actual notice that went out is on in your packet, on page 2 of your packet. It says, notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Waupaca to be held on January 16, 2018 at 5:50 p.m. at the council rooms in City Hall. There will be heard and considered for a passage of a resolution for the discontinuance and vacating of that portion of Miller Street and Redfield Street located in the city of Waupaca, Wisconsin, as described, and they have a description that was attached, and it's also in your packet. A map of the portion of Miller Street and Redfield Street will be vacated and discontinued. Any objection to the proposed vacation and discontinuance of the portion of Miller Street and Redfield Street must be filled in writing with the city clerk prior to the hearing. And did we get any of those objections that you know of? Okay. Understanding what we're here for tonight, then we would take testimony in favor of the vacating of these streets. If there's anybody that would like to give testimony in favor, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less. Any discussion in favor? Hearing none, we'll go to testimony in opposition. Is there any testimony in opposition to the vacation of these properties? Any testimony in opposition? Again, hearing none, seeing none, I will declare this hearing closed then at 5:56 p.m. And we will start the city council meeting at its regular time. Welcome everybody to our regular scheduled city council meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. And as always, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
And would you also take roll, Sandy?
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson. Here. Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
10 present, we have a quorum.
Next up is the consent agenda. These are all items that we vote on with one motion. And unless there is an item on that consent agenda that you would like to see moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, and if so, then it would be acted on separately. If not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keeland, second by Chestnut, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion carried. Regular agenda. Sandy, it looks like you have one.
I do. Under number 8, unfinished business, letter B, a letter from the Russell Buckowitz family was distributed.
Okay, so we have that one addition. We'd be looking for an approval of the agenda unless you see something that you would like to see changed, council. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Chestnut, that we approve the regular agenda with that one addition. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Announcements. We have a certificate of appreciation to Jacob Waller for his 10 years of service. He works in the Public Works Department. He's probably a little tired because he's been working pretty hard. But we have a certificate for here, and we'll ask Justin to get that to him for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. We have a resignation from the Emergency Planning Committee. Terry Harrington has submitted the resignation, so we would need a motion to approve that resignation with regrets.
So moved.
Motion by Perchatsky, second by Mayo, that we approve of the resignation of Terry Harrington from the Emergency Planning Committee. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, we have public input. This is for non-agenda items. If you would like to speak to the council, just step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less. And Aaron, you wanted to recognize somebody?
I can do that, yes. If anyone is wondering who's sitting next to me, this is Evan Bogard. He is here for the Boy Scouts, and he has to get involved in a little bit of municipal government, local government. So here he is. Evan, you want to say anything? No. Surprise, surprise.
Well, he's sitting next to the chief, so he'll keep him in line, I'm sure. All right. Okay, any other public input? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Kari Esbenson, and I reside at 124 East Lake Street. And thanks for letting me speak to you for a couple minutes. The October 4th, 2017 edition of Entomology Today has a lead article called Managing Japanese Barberry to Keep Tick Levels Low and Reducing Lyme Disease. Japanese barberry is an invasive shrub that is very common in the woodlands throughout our area and can blanket forest floors. The ground cover created by the barberry plant creates a human microclimate conducive to tick reproduction and survival. A long-term study of Japanese barberry shows that clearing the invasive plant from a wooded area can lead to significant reduction in the abundance of black-legged ticks, otherwise known as Lyme deer ticks, but need to be maintained in order to prevent rebound in the barberry plant and tick abundance. The study found that clearing barberry reduced tick abundance as well as abundance of ticks infected with the bacterium that causes Lyme disease, Powassan disease, anaplasmosis, and babesiosis, which are all on the rise in the state of Wisconsin. And also have been found in Waupaca County, all except for Powassan. Barberry has the additional impact of causing severe changes in the soil chemistry of woodlands, including loss of organic matter, which favors the growth of invasive weeds, but inhibits native plants and regeneration of forest floors, especially oak, that cannot tolerate the shady conditions it creates. In the Barberry War, another article, it states that barberry has become so present in eastern states that a 3-year project across hundreds of miles from New York to New Jersey found it was far and away the most abundant species. In Japanese barberry, another article, A Threat to Public Health, another multi-year study in Connecticut where Lyme's disease was first discovered, is looking at the relationship between barberry, white-tailed deer, white-footed mice, and deer ticks. Among the study's conclusions, white-tailed deer do not browse the barberry, which helps it outcompete native shrubs. And dense stands of barberry provide favorable habitat for all life stages of deer ticks. Mature barberry is the perfect height for hungry ticks to attach themselves to deer as they pass by, helping to disperse them. And eliminating Japanese barberry will decrease the number of deer ticks, which in turn reduces the risk of Lyme disease and other diseases. In Wisconsin DNR's publication, Invasive Exotic Plants Greatly Threaten the Long-Term Health and Sustainability of Wisconsin's Forests, it states that barberry is not yet abundant in most of Wisconsin's forests and can still be controlled if landowners and managers are vigilant. Tonight I would like to ask the city to consider the possibility of starting a public education campaign for landowners and residents on this species, similar to the way we're trying to draw attention to some of the invasive aquatic species that are affecting Mirror and Shadow Lake, such as curly-leaf pondweed and Eurasian water milfoil. Only in this case, it's a land species that poses both a threat to the regeneration of our native woodlands, but also to human health in the area. And if any of you have had Lyme's disease or any of these other diseases, you know that they can be a terrible thing to deal with, in some cases causing chronic neurological problems. So I wanted to pose that as consideration for council this evening, and wondered even if as part of some of the eco park education work they're doing, that maybe that could be a topic of discussion for a public presentation. So thank you. Oh, I do have some of these papers if anybody's interested in reading any of these. So.
Thank you. Any other public input that we have tonight?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
Last night, exactly 5 years ago, I was appointed to this position and reelected a couple times since then. I will say that it has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Also one of the most frustrating things I've ever done. But I do appreciate the votes of confidence in the past, and thanks for allowing me to be a member.
Great. Thanks, Al. Anybody else? Any other public comments? All right. Let's move on then to the department head reports. I just, going back to the public input, it didn't go unheard, Kari. We will talk at the staff level and see where we can go with the direction of your request. And I'm sure somebody will probably get in contact with you again to see if they can get help on who to get in here to talk about that. So, yep, absolutely. All right, let's go to the department head reports. Kathy, you're number one here.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My report starts on page 9 of the packet, and this is my busy and my staff's busy time of year. We are working in 2 years. We are working in 2017 to close all the books and to get ready for 18. So we're very busy in my office. Otherwise, I don't have anything else.
Great. Again, just remind us again when we'll probably hear the final numbers for 2017.
With the auditors coming in for final in mid-February, we should have by the second meeting in February some very good numbers.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you. Greg.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. So it's a new year, it's a new budget. We have a new assistant director, Emily Heidemann, who was our teen librarian, has been hired. So we're excited about that. We have new initiatives. And we have some new furniture that will be installed in our children's department. They are creating a new homework area, and it is made possible by the family of Joan Taylor. It's a memorial in memory of her. And we expect that furniture to be delivered soon. Our February Every Thursday film series starts next month. It's at 1:30 every February Thursday. We have a new Sensory Saturdays program for families, and we're really reaching out to those families who have kids who are on the autism spectrum and they need a special kind of programming. And everyone's welcome to attend with a caregiver or a child with a caregiver. It's open to everyone, and that starts February 10th, so that's another new thing. They also have a building club, and that's a regular item in the children's department on Saturdays, and you can check our website for that. Our new exhibit is the Woodcarvers exhibit, and they're having a demonstration on January 20th. As always, we still have tablet time for those people who have tablets or phones and have questions at 10 o'clock on Thursdays. So that's all I have for you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Pick. Brennan.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor, members of council. My packet, or my report starts on page 57. Just a couple things to highlight. I regret to inform the council, as identified in my packet, staff did receive a letter last week from the project sponsors for Doc Addies. They are withdrawing the project. Staff has started the process of withdrawal of the grant application with WEDC. It's unfortunate, but we will be working with the property owner to hopefully, try to assist them in finding a new landowner or possible project in that location. And of course, we'll continue to work with all downtown business owners and trying to find grant opportunities and financing to redevelop some of the buildings. On a positive note, we did approve a new brewery down on Churchill Street. That'll be coming forward to the council here, I would expect, in February. We are just working through a couple shared parking and shared cross-access easements right now before we bring the rezone and special use forward. But the name of H.H. Hinder Brewing is located in the former family store or family center down on Churchill Street, and they're hoping for a May opening right around Memorial Day. And just a couple different department changes in my department. John Lust did resign from his position as building inspector on January 2nd. His last day was last week. So we are currently working through that process, trying to find an interim solution as we look to possibly reorganize some of the department and some of the office hours and everything else. So some changes will be coming to my department in the interim period and potentially long term. So we are working through that process, but we are going to have hopefully a solution here tomorrow for building inspection services, at least on an interim basis until we find a long-term solution. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brennan. Public Works, Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. As usual, starting the wastewater side, we've advertised and sent out a request for proposal for a cathodic protection project, and this will be the last part of it. So next month I'll be bringing to council probably some approvals or seeking some approvals. We have bid opening at the end of the month, so pretty soon you won't have to hear about this boring topic anymore. At our plant, 1 year to date, I came here and got approval to replace 2 anoxic mixers. Well, that was 2 of the 4 within our aeration basin, and we're having issues with with 1 of the 2 that we have not replaced. That was in our capital plan to replace those other 2, but we had that in 2020. So we're thinking we're going to accelerate that program. But just giving you a heads up that we got a little thinking to do here. We might be advancing that a little bit. Street side of it, I mentioned last time that the LRIP application was submitted. Working on the TAP grant application, which the mayor signed today, and that will be sent in shortly. Street is also working on developing specifications for a new plow truck, along with trucks for the other departments that are on our capital planning. And one thing to note that at the end of the month, we'll be closing on the Habercorn property on January 31st. Water side, I do have an update to the King Water study. I had that in the note as we don't have an update. Henry informed me just yesterday that we have a meeting set up with the representative from the state and also the engineering firm for next week. So we'll be reviewing that project and seeing where that goes. Just like to make a note on frozen meters and frozen pipes. Be aware, with with the weather we've been having where it gets really cold and it warms up, we don't have very much cover for snow, and that provides kind of an insulating blanket. So when that goes away and also we get the stark cold again, it can lead to freezing pipes. So we publish information on how to prevent that. So please spread the word, be aware of that, and keep an eye on your pipes in the basement. Our total pumping for 2017 was down by 11% from last year. I looked back at our total pumping from about 7 years ago, and we've just kind of slowly been decreasing our total water pumping. I think it's just kind of the culture of today. People are using less, they're conserving appliances these days, are using less as well, along with some improvements from some of the bigger industry of recycling water. So it's a positive because we don't have to spend big money on big wells and big pumps. So we can conserve, we can make our infrastructure last longer. And finally, the railroad work that was approved by council a couple months ago was finally done at Went Drive. That was done last week, right after the rainstorm, so they didn't have very much fun, but it's done.
All right. Thanks, Justin. Aaron, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. You will see one of the topics relating to the Friends of Waupaca Parks later in this meeting. Another thing that the group is working on is we're working with Noah Lenke on a website that would basically be a web-based funding mechanism for the Friends of Waupaca Parks, as well as the River Ridge Trail Endowment Fund, and we'll specify goals for each of those. So those will be coming up in the future. I'll likely share that with all of council when they go live. Marla Snyder has also agreed to help develop some logos, which you've developed 3 free of charge as a kind of a rebranding effort for the Friends of Waupaca Parks. So the Friends are going back and forth over emails right now and deciding what's the best. We do have a Rotary Riverview Park planning meeting this Thursday. That is here at City Hall in the basement. Friends of Mere and Shadow Lake, I have been working with Justin on some stormwater improvements. We have some leftover grant money, about $10,000 from Phase 3 of South Park, that we are working on some stormwater improvements off of the parking lot of Lower South Park to mitigate some phosphorus and sediment that currently is diverted right into the channel, which goes into Shadow Lake. So I thank Justin for that. We do have an ice rink up and running this year. I was asked the question when I walked in here, is this our first year or our second year? And that's a kind of a trick question because we tried it last year and we failed. So this is the first year we do have it up and running. Credit to Josh and Sheldon in working with that. Just so everyone knows, they do have snow removal on streets and sidewalks as their primary duty, so it may be a day and a half or 2 days before that ice rink is cleared. We do encourage anyone to come with a shovel if they want to use it earlier than that. Josh Warner has been working hard on a key fob system and security system. Those are 2 capital projects within the Park and Rec department or at the rec center there. So thank you, Josh, for all your work with that. The key fob system should be done within a month. The security system is already up and running. And then RecFest is February 10th. So we'd love to see everybody out there for RecFest. We are going to have fireworks again. So we look forward to that. Hopefully we get some weather more like lately than a few weeks back. That's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Chief Ozell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My report can be found on page 41 and it ends on 56. Most of mine is just informational. However, I just wanted to touch base, I guess, with the council to give you some information. I was at a meeting last week for our drug task force unit, and last year, the last couple of years, we've received extra money for meth and overtime, and we received $46,000 for heroin overtime in the last year, and then $20,000 for meth, and we were awarded $91,000 for our regular grant. The meth and the heroin grants are going away. So that's an impact of about $66,000 that our task force is going to be losing. And the reason why this is important is we did stats as a task force. Last year our task force had 1,305 new investigations and 110 search warrants just in 2017. If we go back to 2014, we had 1,111 investigations and 203 search warrants. Back in 2014, we were seeing a lot of heroin use that was going on. And as the years have gone through 2014, 15, and 16, the heroin actually started dropping. But what we're seeing now is a huge increase in meth use. Back in 2014, we only seized 15.716 grams of meth. And last year, our drug unit seized 1,084.25 grams of meth. So that's something that we're continuing to work with the drug unit in the municipality here, and it's, you know, the drug unit's really helping, and I just thought I'd bring that information forward. The other thing that was nice too, we had always talked about our department adopted families for Christmas time, and Alderman Chestnut was always worked with us. We got a thank you card from one of the families, and it was from the child, and she indicated she didn't think she was going to have any Christmas gifts under the Christmas tree this year because her mom was going to send her a camp. So when she woke up Christmas morning, she saw all the gifts under the Christmas tree. She had this feeling that she didn't expect anything. So as a young child, she was very happy, and you know, and that all goes back to the officers and also the police commission for chipping in to make that little girl's Christmas a little bit better. So that's all that I have.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Josh, IT.
Well, as Aaron alluded to, I've been working on the security camera and key fob system at the rec center, and that project's been pretty much taking up all my free time outside of the day-to-day stuff. We've been having some software bugs we're working through thanks to Windows updates with Outlook in our phone system. Our monthly TV program, What's Happening Waupaca, we're looking at kind of reformatting that from a community event show to more of a topics and issues show. That's something we've been discussing for a while, the purpose of that program and reviewing that, so there'll be some changes coming to that soon. We've got our radio station trivia contest coming up Saturday, February 17th, and that goes for 12 hours, starts at 10 a.m. So if you want to get a team registered for your chance to win some prizes, you can do so through our website, waupaca.tv. And on the Waupaca Online side of things, I've attended a couple different town board meetings, and both at Bear Creek and Caledonia, and internet's a topic that can fill a town board room with a lot of people. So there's a lot of people out there that have really poor internet that are looking for something better, and right now with our expansion project, we're kind of in a situation just with how the weather's been, trying to get a tower climber available, waiting for some parts to come, hopefully getting some equipment on a tower soon. But we've also been hearing from a lot more people, I think, where the greatest need is for better internet to help us fine-tune specific areas, and trying to find some people to work with. I had one person, come up to me at the meeting and offer silo space. If we want to get on her silo, not a problem, come on over, put stuff up there, as long as she can get better internet. So I'm hoping as we inch into spring and get a few things finished up that we'll be going full force on that project.
Great. Yes, thank you. Josh touched on this, but again, I just want to make a point on that too, that he's talking about what's happening with PAC and changing kind of how they're going to do those things and dealing with topics. So if you can think of topics that you think would be of interest to the community, that's what Josh is looking for to put on our TV station, so that those are things that can continue to air so that people can see them at their leisure instead of, and it will be timely, more timely than what we've been doing. So I think it's a great idea.
I can elaborate on that a little bit. One of the things at the radio station is we can be very timely and immediate in promoting community events, which is a lot of what we've done on What's Happening with PAC, and that gets taped once a month, and sometimes I don't think we're doing full justice to help promote events. I want to get all that stuff on the radio station where we can get more reach and do a quicker and better job with it. And we've had some past episodes where we've done some topics. We had one on drugs. There were a couple other topics, and those get a lot of views. And just Joni and I and some of the staff have been discussing, what's the purpose of the show. And We've had a couple episodes where we've kind of had sort of a panel of people on the set, and we really liked how that went. So, an episode could be on, the drug problem. It could be, a panel discussion on the Main Street project. I might have an idea given to me to do something with small business. It could be something with arts in the community. So we're looking for more topics like that. Instead of promoting an event, to really more deep dive, for 20 minutes or so into something that affects the community and try to get a couple experts in to talk about it. So I think that's kind of the idea we have, and we're going to slowly be trying it out and seeing how it goes. So if you've got ideas, let me know, and so we'll be looking for ideas for kind of this new format.
Great.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
I just
Yeah, go ahead.
would want to add to that. That would be a great place to have education on the invasive species management. Yeah. Right, exactly. Right.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. Henry, you're up.
Thanks, Mayor. My report's on page 63. Really, the only thing I wanted to announce today is that we are going to be having a spring primary. There is a contest for the state Supreme Court, and that primary will be held on Tuesday, February 20th. And as I think about it, do we move the meeting? So just a heads up, that meeting will be moved, February 20th meeting will move to, I guess, the Wednesday next week.
21st.
Yeah, 21st. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. That sounds good. We'll talk about the February 21st meeting that we're talking about now too, and see if there is something we can do instead of moving it to a different date. Maybe we can just move everything to our first meeting in March too. But we'll see if that works out. If there's things that we have to do at that time frame, then we'll have the meeting. But I know that creates conflicts for some people when we change the days, so we'll see what we can do to accommodate everybody. Okay, that's the department head reports. Thank you, everybody. We have unfinished business. We have a resolution number 1399. This was a resolution vacating a portion of Miller Street and Redfield Street in the city of Waupaca. John Hart, anything to, yeah.
Staff had discussion with property owners at some point in the past, and this has been ongoing for, to my knowledge, about a year. In any event, it had become apparent that portions of Miller Street and Redfield Street were unused. There had been some portions some time ago that had been discontinued, but in any event, there still were portions that were unused. In fact, those portions were being maintained by the adjoining owners. Because of that, and because of development on their own property, it became desirous for them to acquire title to the portions of Miller Street and Red Street that were unused by the city and the public, and they could acquire those for private use. In one instance, it was going to make it possible for one of the landowners to meet required setbacks concerning building a garage and whatnot. In any event, to accommodate these owners, and because it is not contrary to the interest of the city of Waupaca, it would be necessary to discontinue the portions of Miller Street and Redfield Street as are designated on the map attached to the resolution. There's a portion that lies immediately north of Townsend Road, and a portion that is borders on the southern portion of Townsend Road, which comprises of a portion of Redfield and Miller Street. And that about sums it up. There are descriptions in there which are meets and bounds, and they describe the shaded areas. The maps that are on the in your packet don't show the shading very well, but they are outlined in heavy print so you can see what they are.
Thank you, John. We did hold a public hearing before the council meeting tonight, and we did not have anybody that spoke in favor or anybody that spoke against this. It is recommended, though, that we approve or adopt resolution number 1399. So we need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Keelan, that we adopt resolution number 1399. It's a resolution vacating a portion of Miller Street and Redfield Street here in the city. Any discussion? Sandy, will call the roll?
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Scott Prochatsky.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
And Mary Fair.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a request which concerns the Oz property detachment. You did get a handout. I think it was in your on your desk tonight, and it also was in your online area too that you could download. I'm going to turn it over to John Hart.
The history on this matter is started back in early September. There was a letter received by the Common Council dated August 10th, and then it was further updated by a letter dated September 13th from Mr. Buskowitz and Ms. Ebsenson requesting that the Oz natural area be returned to them for various reasons. In those two letters to the council, it was intimated that they desired to have the Oz property joined back with the property that they currently own so that it would be comprised of a 34-acre parcel. There is also some language in there which speaks to them having written a formal request to the town of Waupaca to accept detachment of the 34-acre parcel pending its reconstitution and removal from the city of Waupaca. In any event, as a result of that request, there was a council meeting held on September 19th, at which time there was a motion made and it was seconded and approved by the council that the Oz property that was currently owned by the city would be conveyed back to Russ Butkowitz and Carrie Esbenson, and it did include some requirements to be completed by the city. At that same meeting, there was some discussion about detachment of the property from the city and what was necessary. After the passage of the approval to return the property to those individuals, there was a petition filed in proper order with the city to detach the property that was owned by them of 13.035 acres. Did not include any suggestion that the Oz property owned by the city would also be detached. At the same time, there was a letter written to the city of Waupaca which basically said that they had consulted with legal counsel and had decided to initiate the detachment of the 13 acres, that their attorneys had advised them that once they received confirmation of the city's vote to detach the town, that parcel, and the town of Waupaca's vote to accept that parcel, they would then initiate procedure for the city to return, to convey the property, being the Oz property, to Mr. Butkowitz and Ms. Esbenson. In reliance of these representations, the city has been holding out for conclusion of the acceptance by the town of Waupaca, at which time it was understood that the property would be conveyed to those individuals and they would then commence a detachment from the city of that parcel, them being the petitioners. They have now requested that the city commence a petition, which is beyond what was considered all along. That's where we stand this evening. They're requesting that the city file a petition to detach that property, and then I assume if that is completed, then they would take title to the property once it becomes township property. that is completely different than what has been talked about since September when the city approved the advance to those individuals. There was never an approval for the city to commence a detachment of that parcel. If that was going to be considered, that would have to be taken up and then a detachment petition prepared, but it seems to be a little premature given the fact that we all anticipated there would be a conveyance to those individuals and they would do the detachment, and because they're in the middle of the detachment of the first parcel, and it's not clear that that is going to happen because of the time frame and the fact that the town has tabled their request and has not set a meeting, as far as I know, for a hearing on that detachment.
They actually have, John. They have, the meeting is,
We received notice that it was on January 26th, but that's a Friday, so I'm thinking it might have been the 29th? 26th? Friday the 26th is correct.
okay, at 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m.
Given that, it would seem to me it would be advisable for the city to wait and see what the town does, and then depending on the outcome of that, the city could take this up again and decide how they want to handle it.
Okay.
I don't think that in any event, even if it was decided that the city was going to petition for detachment, we could not have that in place and be acted on prior to that 26th meeting. It'd be very difficult to do that.
Okay.
There has to be a notice of intention to detach, published, and a few other things that are preliminaries before a petition can be even brought up, and it would take some time to get that done. And there is no reason to do that now, when in about a week and a half there will be a decision on the first detachment.
Okay. Comments? Council? Do you understand what Attorney Hart is saying here? Okay.
I think there's another little nuance as to why the process was suggested the way it was, that we would deed the land. And I think council agreed to pay for the survey to connect the two parcels. There's actually two actions that we have to do for the DNR because it's got the stewardship restrictions. One, we got to file a deed or something with the title to pull those restrictions off. But the DNR also requires that we approve an agreement to convert. And we finally got that second appraisal back. So that's a little piece of this that council needs to do as well. But I guess the thought is to get all that done and cleaned up, and then you can transfer the parcel to them. I think that was one thought of doing it the way it was suggested back in September. Because we can't forget about those two actions, because the DNR, we have to adopt a conversion agreement that they've prepared.
I know that I had some discussion with Kari and Russ last week, and I told them if they wanted the opportunity to speak to council today, that I would give them that opportunity. So I'm giving you that opportunity at this time. I know that you have a handout, and if this is satisfactory to what you were going to say, then we can just continue the discussion. But if there's anything else that you would like to say at this time. Can you, that's okay. We're trying to put this on TV and radio.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. The only reason that we were pursuing this sequence was because we knew that, detachment is not, as common, obviously, as annexation. And we knew that until the town had some assurance that detachment was actually going to take place, that they were reticent, understandably, to invest a lot of time into researching what it would entail for them to accept the property. And when we went to the meeting with the town on January 8th, and they decided to table it. You know, they knew they didn't have the information that they felt they needed to be confident in making a decision about whether to accept, because they hadn't gone through that process. At least I know the town chair hadn't, and I'm not sure that the other current board members had. But they needed to seek legal counsel, which cost them money to do that, and part of their calculus in whether to accept is whether, you know, they have to look at a cost-benefit ratio for them, whether it makes sense to them to accept the property. And so part of what we wanted them to do is to have some assurance that, okay, they would be getting, you know, that the city would be serious in detaching both properties, and that they would be getting those, and they could factor that into the cost-benefit equation, you know, anticipating, you know, an increase in their tax basis based on receiving the properties. But if they didn't have that assurance that, you know, right now we had made the move to detach our first parcel, they know that, they know what we've paid for taxes, but they don't yet have the assurance that the second parcel is going to be detached, and can factor that in to what, you know, what benefit they may accrue in accepting the first. So that was it. We also, the other reason why we went this way is we knew that it was important to have the support of city staff and other people kind of in helping to create a smooth transition for the detachment and attachment process. And you know, wanted to be assured that we had that support to make that happen. Certainly before we lifted restrictive covenants on the property, because that's the only thing that we have that has protected our interests. And so that was where we were coming from with all of it. So, Russ, would you like to speak?
Good evening, Council. I think that Kari summed it up pretty well, but the part of the reason to ask for the city to go through the detachment process is, again, ultimately our goal is to be able to manage that property as a natural area and get rid of the invasive species, which Kari had addressed earlier this evening. And that's really something that is, if it remains in the city, is going to be really, really difficult for us to be able to do, just because of the mechanisms that we would be using to try and manage this. One of the things is ultimately we would likely be using goats to graze the barberry down after it's gone through some mechanical and herbicidal removal. And so if the property's not going to get removed to the town, then we've really got some hard thinking to do about what our next steps are going to be. And so part of our reticence in accepting the property back and then trying to go through the detachment process, which is, you know, some of it is sort of, we got to see how it goes here, is that we could end up with you know, 20-some acres of barberry that we're trying to manage, and then our hands are sort of tied in terms of being able to ultimately manage that property appropriately. You know, ideally we'd be able to do the treatment, get the goats on the property, get the barberry down. You know, if things go as we hope they do, hopefully that will be a really nice demonstration project for how those invasives could be managed. And you know, that's certainly something that if we're successful in that I know there's barberry elsewhere, you know, along the river and things like that, and if we can, you know, share any of that information, collaborate with the city to help plan future invasive removal, you know, we'd be happy to do that. But that's part of the reason, is just that I'm a little concerned that we could end up with a property that we're really going to struggle with trying to manage those invasives. Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, John Hart's recommendation, if I understand it tonight, is that we just hold off and find out what the results are from the detachment request on the.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it my understanding that if you do not...
Can you use your microphone, please?
Excuse me. Is it my understanding that if the detachment request of the town right now, if that is denied, that you will not accept the Oz property back from the city? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just
a minute. You have a barberry problem on the property you own, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And whether or not that is detached, you have the same problem. If it's detached and attached to the town, it becomes a little simpler. If it is not detached from the city, you have some difficulty. But you're intimating that you would not be as anxious to accept the Oz property if there is no detachment. Is that what I heard you say? It almost sounds like you won't take yes for an answer.
No,
we told you we would give you the property, and you're saying that maybe you don't want it unless it's been detached. But you're the proper people to detach it. If the first parcel gets detached, we give it to you, and you petition for the second parcel. Is what I had recommended initially, but I'm getting the impression that if you don't get a detachment of the first parcel, it means that the Oz property won't be detached, and then you don't know if you want it back, because you want to hold the covenants over the head of the city. Is I believe what you said. Now clarify that if I'm wrong.
We want the Oz parcel back. What we want, John.
Would you come to my office and accept a deed this week to take that property back, irrespective of the detachment that you have in place right now?
What we would like is to be able to take that property back and be able to manage it in a way that is going to address the problems that are there. That's what we want. And we have talked, I brought this up actually with the mayor when we spoke on the phone the other day, and asked Alan, our councilman Alan Keeland, if for some reason the detachment did not go through, whether there was a chance, if it stayed in the city, for example, that there could be some zoning amendment change that would allow for some type of special urban agriculture district that would allow us to utilize rotational grazing, giving the unique location of the site. So what I'm saying is that we're just trying to find a way to take it back so that we can do right by the land, manage it with best management practices, and make that happen. And that we need to have the support of the city, you know, to make that happen. So that's what we're wanting. That's what we're wanting. We want to do the right thing for the land, and we're looking at long-term management of it, because when, you know, we can treat it initially, but there's the longer-term issue of this plant. And I will say that you know, we want the land back regardless, but the point is that you know, if ideally, we would like the full range of tools that are going to help us to manage it properly. That's what I'm saying. So.
And I think we just want to, what we're trying to do, John, is we're trying to exercise some due diligence to sort of understand what our footing is and where we're, you know, how we're going to go forward. The clearest path from our perspective is if that property is already in the town, then we know exactly what tools we can use. If we accept the property beforehand, we're on a little thinner ice. And it's not that we won't do that, but, you know, ideally, we would know exactly what we would be able to do with the property. And then we can move that forward. And some of this, I think, isn't holding things over the city. You know, I do want to, you know, my fear is, I guess, if we accept the property back, council's going to rightfully sort of say, well, that's done, and then we may have a little trouble in terms of actually getting the rest of the process done if we're struggling with detachment. So that's all. We're just trying to know what we're signing on to.
Okay, thank you. In your packet, of course, is the minutes from the meeting back in September that explains what council voted on and approved. And I think that's what John Hart was alluding to at that time, that we would give the property back to Mr. Buckowitz and Ms. Espesen under these terms. So what they're doing, what they're asking tonight is that we basically change that request, and that they ask that we ask for detachment from to the town of Waupaca first before they accept the property back. So in my mind, sitting here thinking how we should set up a motion here, if you so choose, your options are to do nothing, okay, and then they would still accept the property. Once they would go in, they would accept the property, and then basically they would have to ask for detachment then. Or, as John said, he talked about we could make a motion to table this and have this discussion after the township has their meeting. So I think those are your two options, quite honestly. If you can think of another one, or if I'm not explaining it well enough, let me know. But
I would move the table to our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
okay, we have a motion by Hagan. A motion by Hagan. We have a second by Peterson, that we table the discussion on this item until our next scheduled meeting, which is what, February 6th. Okay, any discussion?
I think part of their request, Mayor, is to accommodate the town of Waupaca. When they meet later this month, they're going to want to have an idea that that both parcels are going to be detached before they vote on the first parcel, because it's economically less advantageous to them just to accept the one part, and given the expenses that they're going to incur. So I think there's that factor too. But the other thing I heard from Attorney Hart was that even if we voted to detach tonight, the detachment process probably couldn't take place before they meet. So there's a time standpoint there too that is going to be very difficult. But I think that's where Russ and Kari are coming from, that they want to give the assurances to the town of Waupaca that we desire to detach both parcels, not just the one.
Can we give a... There was a discussion about this way back in September, and we all, while there was no actual vote, there was a consensus that we would approve any petition for detachment. And at that time, based on all the information we had, the consensus was that 34 acres would be up for detachment and it would be approved. That isn't what happened, because they changed the scenario. But that was what was discussed way long ago. And to discuss it again, there isn't any question that the council would agree to a detachment of however they go about it. But there isn't any way that we can assure the town between now and the 26th of January that the Oz Park is going to be detached, because there's a whole lot of steps that we have to go through. And it can't be done before that meeting. Almost can't even be started before that meeting.
Can you outline again what all those steps are we have to do to detach?
If someone wants to file a petition to detach, they have to file a notice of intention to detach prior to the time that the petition is filed. In this case, there was a petition filed to detach on November 2nd. And prior to that time, there was a notice of intention to detach, which was published in the Waupaca County Post. And that publication date, I believe, was back on the 26th of October. There was a notice published. As a result of that notice, then the petition was filed on November 2nd. And on December 5th, the city acted on that petition and granted it. Had that petition been for the detachment of all 34 acres, the city would have granted it, and we wouldn't be sitting here discussing this today. In any event, all of that would have to be done again with this second parcel. A publication in the paper, which wouldn't be until the most earliest it could be done would be not next week, but the week after, because of the requirements of the paper. It would be past the 26th just to initiate that notice of intention, and then a petition has to be filed with the city. There has to be a scheduled meeting, which is going to take another 30 days, and then there's a 60-day time frame for the town to act on it. That's basically where you're at. So before the town could even act on the second parcel, you'd be out 3 months at the earliest, I believe. Which means that there isn't any particular reason to commence doing that prior to the 29th, or whatever day that, the 26th, whatever day that is.
Okay, Scott.
I'm like Paul here. I think John said it too, that we sort of said as a whole body here that we were going to be willing to detach both properties. We just haven't done all the legalese and the paperwork and the signing. So I think if the township wants some reaffirmation, I would think we already gave it. Well, I wasn't could reaffirm tonight, but I don't know if that's possible. Because obviously the legalese can't be done legally until, quite a few weeks hence.
I think the underlying question is, there's no doubt that we agreed that we would detach both parcels. The discussion in September was that it was going to be one parcel, the two parcels put together and detached, as John explained tonight. So we are tabling this for discussion till next meeting if you vote in favor of that. But are you interested in the city detaching the property is really what the question is. Would you prefer that the city ask for detachment, or would you prefer that Kari and Russ request the detachment?
Is there a cost to the city to do it?
An ad. And city attorney's time.
Then it's a lot.
So back when we were looking at this as detaching the two properties together, and then it turned out that we were only detaching the property that Kari and Russ own personally. We spent the money on the notices and the attorneys looking it over and all. We've already spent that money that we should have spent once, and I'm not sure that we should spend it again to do the same thing with the second property.
Okay. Okay. So again, your motion and the second that's on the floor is just to table this discussion until the next meeting. Okay?
And then what you're saying is, then we can discuss again if we want to start the petition or not? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're at a point where you know one way or the other, I just thought I would bring that up, whether that makes a difference on how you vote tonight.
I guess I'm gonna ask John, does it throw any kind of monkey wrench into this whole proceedings if whoever starts the petition? I mean, does it really make a difference?
It doesn't.
Unless it does to the township, I don't know what they're asking or wanting to know.
Who presents the petition makes no particular difference.
I'm sorry?
It does not make any difference.
Okay.
My thought on tabling was just we may have more information.
Okay. Sure.
There was no reason one way or the other. Just that we would have more information at that time to find out the results of the town meeting.
One more question, Henry, have we initiated any of this DNR paperwork you talked about previously with the Oz property?
I've shared it with you, but there is a formal document that you have to review and approve. It's a conversion agreement. And we do have the appraisal on the property. It's a little over 100,000.
So before we can convey that property to them in any form, we have to vote on that?
And we have to convert, either find a piece of property and or make expenditures of at least $100,000 for this to be approved by the DNR. So that's a discussion that you need to have as part of some of this proceedings here to make this happen. And I think that's why it kind of made sense, the sequencing that was proposed, because we could do all that. You could take the actions, we deed the property to them, and then they start the process, and there'd be one request of detachment.
Thanks.
So there was a little thought on the sequence and having that way.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, Sandy is going to call the roll.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
and Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, let's move on. New business, we have mayor's appointment, and I need to refer that to our council president, Paul Mayo.
Thank you, Mayor. The mayor appoints Ashley Buck to the Historic Preservation Commission. Having heard the mayor's appointment, I'd need a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Olson, second by Peterson, to approve the mayor's appointment of Ashley Buck to the Historic Preservation Commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thanks,
Mayor.
Paul. Good job. Next, we have recognition, and I'll let Aaron explain to us.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. There is a memo in your packet on page 155. This pertains to recognition that we had for Sandy Abraham. She's our youth center coordinator, helps out with volleyball leagues, does a good amount of coordinating for those volleyball leagues. She's been with the city for 30 years, I believe volunteered for 4 or 5 years, even past that. Sandy has been a rock solid piece in our department. We can count on her for anything Basically, she is the person we go to when we get in a bind for staffing pinches, and she's available, even though she works evenings, is available a lot of the days too. Sandy's a part-time employee. She works no more than 29 hours a week, closer to 20 to 22 on an average throughout the year, and dedication doesn't come like she has to the city along very often. So there was a motion made, and this is actually wasn't planned or anything, but there was a motion made by Park Board to recognize her by putting a plaque up in the new gym, or the blue gym, for one of 2 volleyball courts, and there would be a plaque hung on the outside of the gym with a picture of Sandy, some recognition and some explanation of that, and then there would be a sign inside the gym stating that the first volleyball court would be named Sandy Abraham Court. So Sandy is still planning to work for the department, and we hope to have her for a lot longer. So that's a little bit of what was discussed, and we'd be looking for the support for that.
We are looking for a motion to do this. I think it's more for recognition purposes, but I think it's a great thing to recognize somebody that's given so much to our community, and especially our youth in our community. So we'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move that first court of the new gym be Sandy Abraham's honor.
We have a motion by Peterson.
Second.
Second by Keelan. That we name one of the courts the Sandy Abraham Court, and put a plaque up with her picture on the outside of the gym area. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Council.
Aaron, you're still up.
Yes. All right. I'm going to move to the podium for this. This is the Friends of Waupaca Parks group. There is a memo and some attachments starting on page 156 and going through 161. I'm going to use the projector. Okay, so the Friends of Waupaca Parks have been, just to set this up a little bit, have been fundraising for, thank you for the lights, Dave, for a number of years, since 2012 when they were funded. I've really been fundraising in a general fund without a specific cause, and have fundraised over $40,000. It was an effort to revamp the Friends of Waupaca Parks starting this August, and we've got a great group together. There was a number of projects pitched to start working towards, and this was the one that was voted on unanimously to go towards. And it is the acquisition of 43 acres off of Southwestern Avenue that we will refer to as the Motif property. The owner is Julie Motif, and I will get into what we see as opportunities here and why we think this is a strategic location for city control of this property. You will see in your attachments a little better outline of what the property actually, where the property boundaries are. You can see the green in one of your attachments does note wetland delineation from the DNR, and you can see this is basically the property as I am in Google Earth here. What I'm outlining with my mouse, it's 43 acres right in this piece, and the reason we see this as such a key connective piece is there's city control obviously off the right-of-way at Southwestern Avenue. The recycling center property also kitty corners up to it. And then the existing trail, which is obviously known as the walking trail, as you can see right here in yellow, and the opportunities that provides. I do have another trail in here. This is the Grass Lake Trail. This is part of the River Ridge Trail system, and it is probably a key example of one of the criticisms we have or we get from the River Ridge Trail system, and that hey, it's a beautiful trail. They're beautiful trail segments, but there's not connective pieces. They don't connect and take you to a lot of places. And you can see this just goes from a neighborhood kind of to the back of the Woods Mall there. So I'm going to kind of click off a couple things just to show this as a progression. This is testing my eyes, but so this is what we currently have, obviously, in trail systems in that area. The main priority, if this was acquired, would eventually down the road, and I'll get to that in a second, would be this main spine to connect this neighborhood to not only the walking trail, but obviously the high school and a main institution and parks such as South Park. This trailhead here that I just threw up just gets us to Southwestern Avenue and sidewalk across the street there. This is another key piece and a great opportunity, I feel, and the group feels, to serve this neighborhood. There's about 23 homes in this neighborhood, and to connect those residents by way of safe routes to the school and South Park, we thought was a major benefit. This is another piece here. This could either run along the road. There's one property owner here. If there was never cooperation from that property owner, this could run along the road. And then once it gets to here in this corner to the street here, this is actually being maintained as a trail by a property owner. Mr. Sensenbrenner actually has called me a few times asking if this be noted as a River Ridge Trail segment, and he is keeping that up. It's right behind the church. And then this gets you to city sidewalks, which can move people, bikers, hikers, walkers, anywhere throughout the city and to the downtown area. This is an alternative route. So this, and this, they wouldn't, all three wouldn't exist. This would, I suppose, but it'd be either or for these two. This would require the property owner cooperation, and if we were never able to get that, we could skirt our property, being this recycling center, and then this is actually right away for street. So that would be an option to serve this neighborhood without even getting permission from property owners. This is kind of the next couple segments I'm going to show you would be, phase 2 of trail development. I'll put it that way. But there is opportunities because of land that was donated in lieu of park fees when this development was created. We have small pockets throughout here that we could connect by getting very few landowners' cooperation, and that could get us all the way to DNR land. This is Jackwith Lake, and this is DNR property, and DNR actually has an easement out to Q here and Quick Trip in that area. So those are just some areas that we see, and it can obviously go from here. I've brought this to dirt. We've talked about getting it further west in the city. We've talked about connections to Swan Park, and those are things that would be looked at in the future as well. But this is kind of an immediate picture of the possibilities we see just by acquiring this 43 acres. So the reason that we think that this may be a good fit is, number one, it not only does it provide 43 acres of natural area in a unique portion of the city that's fairly centrally located. We are blessed to have beautiful parks throughout the city, but really none on the western half. As the city expanded west, there wasn't plans for green space. We do feel like this green space could boost values of current homes here. As we know, there are some undeveloped lots in this area, and actually there's a street right away here for future street development, and 43 acres of green space and trail connectivity to these types of institutions we feel like could only help development in those areas. So that's a huge benefit that we see, along with just preserving that natural area. Another benefit is we are concerned with sustainability. We are concerned with our operating budgets as we come back each year. And this, I guess I view this as a two-part project. So we're talking right now about acquisition of the 43 acres. We're not talking about trail development. I just wanted to show you what we see as opportunity in the future. The acquisition is part one, and then trail development will obviously be more grants, more matches, and then there will be more upkeep that comes with that. And I think that could be determined on when is the best time to move forward with that type of project in the future. And if we determine it's in 2 years, or if it's next year, or if it's in 15 years, that's at least an option that we have. If we don't have control of that property, we may not ever have that option. We have a landowner right now that's willing to work with us. If it gets sold to a different landowner and it transfers hands, we may not have that opportunity for the next 100 years. So that's the way we're kind of looking at it in our department, and that's the way the Friends of Waupaca Parks are looking at it. And those are, I guess those are some of the things we're doing. So just to give you an idea of how we would acquire this, it would be no tax dollars. I'm proposing that, I shouldn't say, I guess DNR tax dollars, but no local tax dollars would be used to acquire it. Right now we have a number of about $150,000. That's not a concrete number because that's is going to be determined by an appraisal that will have to get paid for through the Friends of Waupaca Parks. And then 50% of it would be covered by DNR grant, a local assistance grant, and I would apply for that in May 1st, or the deadline is May 1st of this year. They typically award those grants in September, so we would know by that time. As I mentioned, we have $40,000 towards our match in the Friends of Waupaca Parks. We also have $17,000 or a little over in an Achieve grant that we received in 2012, and we have a balance in that, and this fits right along with that mission. We also have a few other donation areas that I would like Park Board's opinion on, which would be best appropriate to help close that gap of 17, or I believe, about $18,000 that we would have left, but I'm very, very confident that we could get to that 150 mark without coming back here and asking for any local tax dollars for acquisition. So I guess what I'm here to do is, first of all, show you the discussion we've been having, and second, ask for your support in just for me to apply for the grant. And upon getting that support, the Friends of Waupaca Parks would give the $2,000 to purchase the appraisal, so we could move forward with that. But they do not want to do that unless they know that they have city council support for the project.
Anybody have any questions of Aaron? Comments?
Aaron, if I presume this grant is a competitive grant, there's really no for sure guarantee we would get that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely right. We could go through this and I could be unsuccessful in getting the grant, and
then we might be...
we're pretty heavily reliant on that grant if we were to move forward with this. Yes. We do feel like, because of the things we discussed, the DNR values a lot of those things. We feel like we have as good of a shot as anybody at getting it, but you're right.
Well, it was a great presentation. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'd move for approval. I was just going to move for approval.
Do you want to make some comments?
Yeah, Aaron and I have had this discussion before, and my only objection to this is the city of Waupaca has way too many parks in the first place. They just have way too many for the citizens of the city of Waupaca. And the townships aren't willing to help very much. Let's say they're not willing to do their fair share. And we get this acreage, and today it's not going to cost us anything, and next year it's not going to cost us anything, but then bang, and we're stuck with more parks. And that's my only objection. Your presentation was great. You almost got me to...
Or to not comment on it.
Yeah, but I think it has to be said. I really do.
Yeah, and yeah, Steve, we talked a little bit about this. I thought you weren't going to comment, and I was surprised. And I guess I'm as concerned about some of that stuff as you. And the one comparative I'll give to this property is we have properties on the East Gate that are very similar, that if you ask Josh, our park supervisor, he wouldn't even know we owned. So I guess, like I said, this could stay natural as it has been for a long, long time until council decided it's the right time to move forward. And if not, if that isn't for 5-10 years, well, then I would anticipate it'd be just like those properties out in the East Gate that are natural, that we don't really do anything with at this point. So, but yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Paul, go ahead.
I would move to approve of Josh, or not Josh, Aaron, Aaron applying for the DNR grant.
A motion by Mayo, second by Olson, that we approve of our Parks and Rec director applying for a grant for the Motive property, and the deadline is May 1st, 2018. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Thank you, council.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. It helps that he had to make the presentation to me first, you know, so he had a second chance to improve on it. Okay, let's move on then. We have a contract that, for Beaumar appraisal. Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, this item begins on page 162 within your packet. This is partly a follow-up action to as part of the 2018 budget. As we do on a yearly basis, we typically reach out to Beaumar for our contract appraisal services. Because of the budget constraints, we've discussed it in years past to try to do a reval or a market adjustment, but the cost is just too significant to do that. So we've maintained a year-by-year appraisal contract with Beaumar Appraisal. In years past, they have not raised it. They have been very good to the city, and as they were aware of our budget crunches the last couple of years, they did not raise their services. However, when we did receive the contract for this year, we saw an increase of over 25%, over about $6,000 above what we typically would be paying. And with other budgetary constraints within my department and increases in some fees, we were not able to absorb that this year. I was able to negotiate with Beaumar a 2-year contract that incrementally brought the cost down and fit it within the 2018 budget. And as we move forward to 2019 in the future, we'll have to fit that in there as well. But so what is in front of you this evening is a 2-year contract with Beaumar, and we hope as our budgets start to get better and we start seeing more development, we'll be able to possibly look at doing that market adjustment or reval in 2020.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve of a 2-year contract with Beaumar in the amounts that are listed here. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Keelan.
Second.
Second by Hackett, that we approve entering into a renewal 2-year contract with Beaumar Appraisal, ending December 31st, 2019. The amount would be $21,400 in 2018 and $24,000 in 2019. Any discussion? Sandy, call the roll.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
And Steve Hackett.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, and we are still, Brennan, you're still up, right?
Yep. Thanks, Mayor.
City-owned property.
Members of council, this item is on page 167. What you have in front of you is a proposal that the internal design review team has been working on over the last couple months. As the council and community is aware, the city last year acquired several residential lots within multiple subdivisions as part of agreements with developers who did not meet their targets within their developers agreements. And what we're proposing this evening is a price structure for and proposal for the city to start trying to sell these properties and market them to individuals within the community. The goal of this really is to bring new homeowners into the community, get the net new construction up, hopefully recoup some of the costs that the city or the developer put into the ground originally for sewer, water, and stormwater systems. Within your packet, we are concentrated on 2 different subdivisions. The first subdivision that we'll discuss is Woodland Estates, which is up near Swan Park. There are about 20 lots up there right now that are undeveloped. The goal that we are proposing is to try to sell 80% of those for new homes, which is about 16 properties. And then we have about 4 properties that may be targets for adjacent homeowners to be purchasing to expand their lot. We have had some inquiries so far from homeowners up in that area to discuss that. We have, because of the size of the lots and the location within Woodland Estates, we are proposing 2 different pricing structures for those lots. Lots that are a little bit of a larger scale on the western portion of the subdivision near Brainerd Drive would be in your map on page 169 that are highlighted in, I'll go orange, is we're proposing those lots to be sold for a minimum of $7,000, and the lots that are in purple on the eastern side that are close to Highway 49 would be sold at a cost of $3,500. As part of the incentive for development within this subdivision, we would be carrying the builder's risk insurance, and the transfer of the lot would occur at the time that occupancy would be granted to the homeowner once construction is complete. We also have identified if a homeowner is looking to acquire a property to attach to their existing property. Again, properties in orange would carry a cost of $15,000, and properties in purple would carry a cost of $10,000. Again, those would be for parcels where individuals are not seeking to build a home but attach it to their existing parcel. We would require them to attach it and not leave it as a single parcel within the subdivision. There are design standards that were developed as part of the original subdivision. There's actually about 4 of them, so we are looking to maintain the quality of homes that have already been constructed and the values up there. So you can see the design standards that are listed as part of the covenants. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are some design standards that we would be maintaining. The second subdivision that we are discussing this evening is Buffalo Ridge. The city acquired 3 lots as part of the agreement with the previous developer and working with the county on that. Our sales target would be to sell all 3 properties, and we are looking to place a price of $3,500 for those parcels each. And that subdivision also did have some restricted covenants, which are listed below. We are working with Alan Markowitz currently to create the sales template for the transfer of properties when we get to that point. Our goal, our objective here is to create kind of a nice little proposal or kind of package that we'll be sending out to. There's a couple different avenues that we can utilize for home builders associations in Wisconsin, along with some other realtor group and builders. So that is our plan right now, is to create kind of a nice little promotional packet and get that out here within the next couple weeks. And hopefully within the next couple of months we'll see some inquiries for homes. We believe that the price point that we've listed these properties at will gain some interest from individuals. I know that Justin and I have sat down with a couple developers that are looking to build a couple spec homes within the community, and the price points that we had mentioned to them were favorable for individuals looking to buy a home here. With that, I open it up for any questions.
Any questions, council? Again, what we'd be looking for tonight then is for, go ahead, John.
I believe there's a state law that requires that if you're in the real estate business, someone has to have a broker's license to do this, which means you have to list them with a broker. I believe that is the current law. So you might want to check on that as to if you have to associate with a broker.
Do you
to
think our
sell this
attorney
property.
could look that up for us and?
I will do that.
Okay.
But I'm almost certain that's accurate, that you just can't go out and get in the real estate business
Okay.
without having a broker associated with you.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate
you're going
it.
to pay a commission on these. And I suspect that you're going to have a minimum commission, which is going to be $1,000 or $1,500 on a deal like this on each lot that sells. So you might, I understand you're not in the business of making money on the sales, you just want to get them on the tax roll and get a house on them. So that maybe is a consideration, but I will let you know if you need to have a broker.
Okay, so given that information, do we want to hold off on this? Or does it matter, council? Okay, all right. I mean,
Would you want to include the price of the agent now?
yeah, we don't have any.
You know, I mean, well, you kind of mentioned about 15.
All I'm saying is that you need to have a broker involved, and what you price them at it depends on what your expenses are going to be. But I don't know that that's the point here. The point is to get houses on these lots, not necessarily to make money from the sale of these lots.
Okay.
But you may find out that to get a broker involved and to list these, there is going to be a minimum commission, especially on a sale of $4,000 or $5,000. It's not going to be a percentage. It's going to be a minimum, and I would expect it's going to be over $1,000. But that depends on the broker and who you're listening with.
Okay.
If you have to list it at all.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we're basically asking, or Brennan is asking that we approve of the marketing plan that he presented. So we would be looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve the plan.
Motion by Olson.
Second.
Second by, I'm sorry, Fair, that we approve the city-owned residential lots marketing plan. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Alan Keelan.
Aye.
And Mary Fair.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Thank you, Brennan. Okay, next we have an update on the 2018 capital improvement plan. Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. My report starts on page 171, and I provided what was the original list of projects from the September Committee of the Whole meeting and what was included in the 2018 budget. Those projects have been tweaked and updated based on prices that have come through, changes in where the staff is looking to go. Some of the changes are is there was an additional $44,000 added to Evans Street, $35,000 was added for the fire department concrete work for the apron, and $55,000 for the public works garage based on the final price. We came into agreement with the school district. We are adding, because of the purchase of the Habercorn Field and with knowing to what we can do with Lakeman Field, staff is adding $25,000 for facilities prelim study for the Public Works Garage property at Habercorn, and to include Lakeman Field, to make sure that we're looking at getting the property trued up, what can be done as far as buildings on that property. We haven't received confirmation from the Board of Aeronautics on the almost $2 million worth of projects for the airport, so we've moved that out. So that took out $83,000. We're adding a pedestrian bike plan because of what we need with Evans Street and Aaron's presentation and some other stuff. We don't have that. It's estimated to be about $40,000. This would be not borrowed funds, but use of some other funds that the city has, along with a wayfinding study that we are in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce and Convention Visitors Bureau to set up a wayfinding study for $40,000 using some other funds within the city. I have added a future land purchase that's been discussed through the design review team of $250,000. And the only reason I'm adding it is that we are going to market for this year's projects because of the refinancing of the 2008 GEO bonds, the 2012 state trust fund loan, and the 2015 state trust fund loan to take advantage of the market, in that our financial advisors feel that based on what the village of Pulaski was able to obtain in the market last week was a 2.8% rate with an A+ rating, and they feel that we would be comparable to that same interest rate. The state trust fund last week did raise their rates. 3 to 5 year is 3.25. 6 to 10 year is 3.5, and more than 10 year is 3.75. So it is not advantageous for us to go to the state trust fund loan to get this type of funding for these projects. The only disadvantage with it is that I can't wait until we get firm prices on everything we're going right now. And so I'm going to be asking for $1,550,000 worth of new funding money for projects that we would use for the 2018 capital improvement plan for the projects that are listed. And that if we don't, we'll have to watch to make sure that that 1.5 million is available as the projects get approved. So it won't be one of those where you approve the project and I borrow at the end of the year for what you've approved and what they've come in for. Instead, I'm going to have to watch to make sure that we don't go over that 1.5 million. And keep track. And if we do have any extra leftover money, we have 24 months to spend those bond proceeds. So we could move up a 19 project or partially fund 19's projects with those monies. So what I'm looking for tonight is any questions on the projects. I'm sure the departments who put the list together can answer any questions, but I'm looking at increasing the new money request for the 2018 to be $1,150,000 for those projects.
$1,550,000. $1,550,000.
If you do not want to put the extra $250,000 out there for future land purchase, then it would be only $1.3 million.
What do you mean by future land purchase?
Let me handle this if I can. There is a parcel of property that would be advantageous to the city, but right now we cannot discuss it publicly. And you're not approving spending that money on this property by what Kathy's suggesting here. So that's why she's presenting it the way it is. If you want to, we'll know more in the short future. But I just think it's better that, for negotiation purposes alone, that we don't discuss what that property is. Okay? Sorry about that, but.
But again, council would not approve the use of those bond funds unless it agrees with that project. We could always move additional projects from the 2019 into that placeholder, or we may even need that money if those engineering estimates for the City Hall parking lot come in higher than $520,000, or Evans Street comes in higher. You know, by doing that ahead of time, the borrow, it's a crapshoot. I'm sorry.
So what you're saying is we still have discretion over what we spend that money on. We'll have it, but we still have a say-so.
Right. You still have a say-so for 2 years. We have 2 years to spend it down. If not, if we don't spend it down and we don't have projects in there that meet the bond covenants, then what we would do is we would use that to prepay that debt. We would have to go back to prepaying debt.
Okay. And how much is this increase from what we were anticipating?
It's about $326,000. So it isn't very much. It's about $73,000 worth of new projects, and then the land purchase.
There are two recommendations here. Does that require two motions?
I'm going to have you do that you approve the capital improvement plan, and then to approve the borrowing.
Let's remember, though, of course, it is just a plan that we're approving. It has to come back to council with the project in hand. Okay. Everybody understand? Any other questions specific? So let's do the, if you're okay, let's do the improving the capital improvement plan first.
I move that.
A motion by Keelan.
Second.
Second by Olson, that we approve of the updated city's 2018 capital improvement plan in the amount, well, no, we don't need an amount here. Okay. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Dave Peterson. And Alan Keeland.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Can I add more stuff now on the borrowing?
You can.
On the borrowing, even though we're adding that $325,000, our outstanding general obligation debt is still going down, because we're looking at refinancing existing debt, which is shorting up the term of those bonds. And then we're also going to be looking at doing a refinancing as presented from R.W. Baird in refinancing quite a few of the TIF debt. And in doing that TIF debt, we are looking at paying down actually TIF number 5's debt, and it will at the end of this year have no outstanding debt and be in a position to be closed. So that when we do this, I would be coming back later this fall, and what we did with TIF 7 is as recommend termination of TIF number 5, and bringing that back onto the tax roll. And that's using the increment that TIF 6 has available from this year's increment. And also, TIF 6 will also have no debt because it only has $56,000 worth of outstanding debt, and we'll be prepaying that debt down. So TIF 6 would be available to fund all of the outstanding debt in TIF 3 and shorten that debt service schedule so that by 2020 you could close TIF 3. And all you would have is TIF 8 and TIF 4 out there. And we're looking at also shortening up that. Those debt services, when they're available in 2020, to shorten those debt service schedules up and refinancing and paying that debt down along with TIF 10's debt. So by 2020, we're looking at possibly closing TIF 9 and 10, and then in 2023 closing TIF 4 and 8. By 2023, all TIFs would be closed. That's my projections right now, which would be really, really good.
It'd be great. It's based on a few things, but yeah.
But based on a few things, I think that it's a positive. One of the things is with this financing of the $1,550,000 is there's a $140,000 savings over the state trust fund loan, and that's net of issuance costs. So I think that it's a good thing. We keep looking at our debt and taking advantage of the market, and we'll also be seeing where we are since the last time we went out to the market was 11 years ago, and see where we stand financially in the open market. So I'm very positive that we'll be like the Village of Pulaski and be an A+ and be able to get that 2.8% interest rate, or if not better. So because we do have some really good financial plans in place. So so I just need to be able to now do the financing for the $1,550,000 of new money to this the refinancing.
And how long is the process?
We are having a ratings call with Standard & Poor's on Friday. So the official statement is out, and we will be coming back. The bonds get sold on the 6th, so we will know on the 6th of February.
Okay. So fairly quickly.
Very quick.
Okay. All right. Any questions on what Kathy has presented? We're looking then for an approval to go out and finance $1,550,000.
Second.
Motion by Mayo, second by Whitman, that we approve of staff to go out for financing for capital projects in an amount not to exceed $1,550,000. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
And Alan Keeland.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. Next up, we have the revision to the water tower lease between the City of Waupaca and Mark Gerlach. Henry?
My memo is on page 188. You approved this lease back in July for our other low-power FM station to locate on our Mount Tom facilities. They proceeded to do that, and there was some frequency interference with Waupaca Online. So based on that, the other low-power station looked to the Shambo water tower to see if maybe that would work for them. There was a test done, and it seems to work fine. And what staff is requesting is just to clean up this lease document and change the location. So I just thought it was appropriate for you to see it and approve the new location.
Great. Motion?
So moved.
Motion by Hackett.
Second.
Second by Perchatsky, that we approve of the revision to the water tower lease between the City of Waupaca and Mark Gerlach, WAUP, a low-power FM radio station. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Alan Keelan,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
and Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
License report number 1395. This is an operator's license. It's on page 194 in your packet. Again, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve 1395.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Whitman. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. License report number 1396. This is a taxi driver's licenses. We would need approval of this.
Move to approve.
Motion by Olson, second by Peterson, that we approve license report number 1396. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. License report number 1397. This is dance hall licenses. Again, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hagan, second by Fair, that we approve license report number 1397. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We're on a roll there for a minute, weren't we? Okay, next, and we've all been looking at these for the night here, but we have Sue Abrahamson here, and she's going to talk about coding.
Aaron, you did that so well. With that. You helped with the projector before. You knew his stuff. Yeah, he did. He was able to just go like that. It happened.
If it's one button, I can help you.
All right.
So we hooked up, I guess.
Technology.
I'm not a user.
Josh, what's the user?
Sure.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
All right. What a treat, huh? I'm doing something past 8 o'clock at night. Whew. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me tonight. Peg asked me to come on behalf of the library and talk to you a little bit about our coding initiative at the library. This is a statewide initiative, and it is speaking to the issue of new literacy in, as opposed to only having written word literacy. There is a digital literacy that we are charged as public libraries to talk about in our communities. And this is the presentation I gave at a Lunch and Learn in the fall. And we're going to talk a little bit. This is one of my favorite topics to speak about in the public. I'll be talking about it at Bethany Home in another month, and once again with Winchester Academy next summer. I am the children's librarian. I am not a programmer, but I do friendly call myself a code talker because I do love to talk about code. It is my favorite topic of last year. We're going to talk real briefly about how I got interested in coding and why I was selected to talk to you. We're going to talk about why public libraries care about coding and what you should know about coding and how coding is connecting people worldwide. I think this is not just a children's issue. This is a public service issue around our country, or around our city and our state and our country, but it is also an economic development issue because these are skills that will be necessary for employees in the future. And if we have a population that has these skills, then of course businesses will be attracted to our community. All right. So my dad let me drive this car. It was a Bonneville. It was the 70s.
I could get 10 friends in that car. We're not going to talk about where we went, but it was a fun car. And my dad always taught us, you know, look under the hood. Know what's under the hood of your car. And so when I looked under the hood, I figured I could get 2 more people in there, because look at all the room that was there. The picture on the right is obviously, as Alderman Perchatsky will tell you, what the inside of a hood of a car looks like today. And there's, go ahead. Are you going to do this whole thing? I can do that. I'm concerned about the noise coming. Okay, so this is the computers in your car. There's anywhere from 35 to 150 computers in your car, depending on what you've got. And not that I have to know how each one works. I do have to know that computers are playing an important part. And I am very interested in seeing how these self-driving cars are going to work and what that's going to all pertain, you know, to our culture. I still want to know why my check tire light won't go off, though, because I've had it on for quite a long time. But technology affects every field. I just had my knee replaced. It was a robotic surgery. It was absolutely phenomenal. It is in our entertainment industry. The contact there shown has a code in it that can help the person wearing the contact check their insulin levels if they're diabetic. We're talking, this is how code has affected everything. Of course, our space program, our telephones, we're all walking around with phones in our pockets that are totally connected. Last night we watched a program on PBS about Miracle on the Hudson. They were talking about how even the controls of the airplane are so computer oriented. So it isn't so much that we all have to learn to code to be coders as a profession, but if I'm going to school to be a nurse or a doctor, I need to know how that code is going to affect the products that I use and where code is going to benefit my patients. And having technology, especially in assistive medical devices, it's absolutely huge. We're going to go really quick here. All right, so what is coding? We're going to watch this little video here.
It's incredible how many different people are showing up to this coding education event offered by their town's library. Sophia really likes chess and logic puzzles, and her dad wants her to look into some careers. Coding sounds promising. Brian wants to support his family and decided he needs a new career he can learn quickly. Here's some friends who formed a bond this year. They all really need a creative outlet. Building an amazing website would be a great way to make their mark in the world. Plus, knowing how to make things online is a powerful skill. So this free event is right up their alley. Sharon and Kiara don't know anything about coding, but they're used to collaborating. And if she likes it, Kiara is planning to organize a similar event for employees at her business. Sharon might do the same with the after-school group she runs. Watching everyone arrive, Tua is amazed. He set up this event, but even he didn't realize how many different roads could lead to coding these days. He hasn't told anyone about his own interest in coding. More about that later. But to be honest, he wasn't really sure what coding was until recently. It can be confusing. To some, coding is a synonym for computer programming. Other people say it's more or less than that. But for the library's purposes, they went with the understanding promoted by the Coding Initiative in Wisconsin Public Libraries. When we say coding, we're thinking about computer programming, but also a kind of literacy. The ability to apply a certain type of thinking, often called computational thinking, for problem solving and stimulating creativity. Defined like this, coding includes many ways of solving problems, designing systems, and even understanding human behavior. It really is a huge field for anyone and everyone. Tua used resources from the state initiative to set up tonight's event as a way for people in the community to come together and get better at this modern language. The evening will feature some games that aren't on computers. To work on the mental skills behind writing code, there will be some computer activities that are also pretty visual. And for those who want to, there will be the chance to go all out typing code. So Tua's happy, mostly for his community. But also, he thinks maybe someday he could build an app to help manage some of his library projects. It might take a little time, But that's why, just like for everyone else here tonight, it's important for him to get a taste of this thing that's become so ubiquitous. Your library can help many people in your community with many different needs by offering some kind of coding education. Learn more about how to do it at our website.
All right, so what we're going to move on from here is that the Waupaca Public Library, and I'm very proud to tell you this, has been chosen by the state as one of the top movers in coding of a library our size.
I'm trying to get it to go to the next one. There we go.
Sorry. So we've been asked to present around the state the types of things we're doing in Waupaca. We're very proud to do so. We hold coding events at the library. We have these coding toys that are in front of you available for people to use at any time. We right now are gearing toward the elementary and middle school students. We have a few things that are suitable for high school. Our high school has an amazing computer program already, and they're competing, and it's wonderful. If you follow them online, it's pretty great. But coding itself is not a scary thing. It really is breaking things down. If you've ever followed a recipe or followed a instruction manual of how to set something up, it's pretty much that. You need to know how to problem solve by breaking things down into smaller pieces. Go ahead. A lot of digital users look like this. And that's what a lot of people think, oh, what's this world coming to? Look at these kids, they're all their noses in the computers, you know, whatever. So what we're trying to do, and look at these guys here, they're making each other, they're making fun of each other. They shouldn't do that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make our digital users, because we all use digitized information. We all use our phones. We all, you know, play some sort of a game or use some sort of an app. But what we're trying to do is get those digital users to see that they can be digital creators. Next slide, please. And by getting them together to work in groups and problem solve at the library, we can open those doors so that they become digital creators rather than just digital users. Go ahead. I'm going to go really quick, because I know time is. 90% of parents, this is from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, and code.org, which is the Hour of Code organization that we utilize, have done studies, and they said 90% of the parents want their child to study computer science in school, only 40%. So this has put us as a nation at a disadvantage for top jobs in coding and in this kind of digital technology. Yeah, next one. The picture in Wisconsin isn't as bad as in other states. We have right now 7,313 open computing jobs, but only 918 computer science graduates, and only 60 high schools teach advanced placement computer science. This is the slide that probably upsets me the most, that 1% rule of the internet culture, in that we all who use the internet are lurkers or contributors, in that we add our little blurb on Facebook or whatever, but look at the number of creators. 1%. So this means the power of that 1% to influence the rest of us is huge. So what libraries are trying to do in developing this digital literacy and through coding is by making creators, we can broaden that scope of influence. It's going. So there are some cases that are really very interesting. They tell really quick stories about solving problems with coding. And we're going to start right away with the municipality. So there is an organization that's very similar to the Peace Corps. It's called Code for America, and college kids who are coders can sign up for a stint in Code for America. And they are sent to municipalities around the country and sent there with a distinct purpose of solving that community's problem. And so a great story to start off with is Boston. Go ahead. In Boston, of course, they get loaded with snow, and it's usually like 27 inches at a time, and the whole city shuts down, and the whole world knows about Boston snow. And Code for America was having their conference in Boston at the time of a huge snowfall. And prior to Code for America solving their problem, the fire department, the fire fighters, it was their job to go out and shovel out all the fire hydrants after a huge snow. So you can imagine in a time when their infrastructure is weakened because of the snowstorm, the firefighters are out shoveling the fire hydrants out. Code for America went in and they devised an app where people in Boston can now adopt a fire hydrant. They can actually name it. That's the only thing that they really get to do. The other thing they have to do is shovel it out. And so not every fire hydrant in Boston is now adopted, but quite a few of them are. And the fire department has now the task of putting out fires and going to emergency calls rather than shoveling out the fires. This is the devastation after that tsunami in Japan in 2011. And right after the tsunami hit, and boy, we can all kind of remember those pictures, how horrible that wall of water came in. A group of young coders got together and held a conference, and they challenged each other to come up with emergency plans and apps and programs, computer programs that the people, general public, could use to be safe if this ever happens to them. And within 3 weeks, they came up with like 700 different types of programs, and they had to choose, and they came up with the top five or six. I can't remember if it was 5 or 6. And the government funded those app developers, and some of them are basically, helping children find their parents in a terrible disaster like this. Some of them are preparing for the disaster. Some of them are about giving the warning signals. So it was quite powerful for that community, for that country. Next one. And of course, the space program. Who ever thought that they would send a rover to Mars? And it's quite remarkable when you think that they send code. They're changing the code all the time, telling it to do different things, and it takes so long for that code to get there. But that machine is still understanding the code that's being sent from the Jet Propulsion Lab in California. Keep going. And this is a great story we tell the kids. We have a 3D printer at the library, and we made those great prosthetic hands this summer. The teens were working really hard on that. This is a great story about a bald eagle named Beauty who was shot, and her beak was blown off, and she was found by a police officer very weak because without a beak that bird couldn't eat or drink. And they brought it to a wildlife rehabilitation center, and then to a dentist where they took some impressions, and they made a prosthetic beak for this bird. So there's lots. Kids love this story, I'll tell you that. They're not sure about the tsunami one. And there's our prosthetic hand that we made for kids. So coding is involved in all of this, and I think it's important for us to know that it's out there and know how important it is. Next one. I'm not sure what's next. Some municipalities in Europe are using 3D technology and coding to build bridges over the canals, and you can see this in progress right there. And then in China, after the terrible earthquakes, they are building houses. Instead of plastic filament like we use in our 3D printer, they're using concrete, and they're building houses. A house like this can be built in a day or two. And so it's quite the amazing technology. Last video, and then you got questions. I'm going really fast, sorry. This is
It's abbreviated.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old.
I was in 6th grade.
I learned to code in college, freshman year, first semester, intro to computer science.
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I think it was pretty humble beginnings. I think the first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I first learned how to make a green circle and a
red square appear on the screen.
The first time I actually had something come up and say, hello world, and I made a computer do that. It was just astonishing.
Learning how to program didn't start off as wanting to learn all of computer science or trying to master this discipline or anything like that. It just started off because I wanted to do this one simple thing. I wanted to make something that was fun for myself and my sisters. And I wrote this little program and then basically just added a little bit to it. And then when I needed to learn something new, I looked it up either in a book or on the internet and then added a little bit to it.
It's really not unlike kind of playing an instrument or something, or playing a sport. It starts out being very intimidating, but you kind of get the hang of it over time.
Coding is something that can be learned, and I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating, but what isn't?
A lot of the coding that people do is actually fairly simple. It's more about the process of breaking down problems than, sort of coming up with complicated algorithms as people traditionally think about it.
You don't have to be a genius to know how to code. You need to be determined.
Addition, subtraction, that's about it.
You should probably know your multiplication tables.
You don't have to be a genius to code. Do you have to be a genius to read?
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball, or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
What it is, computers are everywhere. You want to work in agriculture? Do you want to work in entertainment? Do you want to work in manufacturing? It's just all over.
Here we are, 2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, information, and none of us know how to read and write code.
When I was in school, I was in this after-school group called the Whiz Kids, and when people found out, they laughed at me and, all these things. And I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool, and, I'm learning a lot, and some of my friends have jobs.
Our policy is literally to hire as many talented engineers as we can find. The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
To get the very best people, we try to make the office as awesome as possible.
We have a fantastic chef,
Free food,
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
free laundry,
Snacks. Even places to play and video games and scooters. There's all these kind of interesting things around the office and places where people can play or relax, or go to think or play music or be creative.
Whether you're trying to make a lot of money or whether you just want to change the world, computer programming is an incredibly empowering skill to learn.
I think if someone had told me that software is really about humanity, that it's really about helping people by using computer technology, it would have changed my outlook a lot earlier.
To be able to actually come up with an idea and then see it in your hands and then be able to press a button and have it be in millions of people's hands. I think we're the first generation in the world that's really ever had that kind of experience.
Just to think that you can start something in your college dorm room and you can have a set of people who haven't built a big company before come together and build something that 1 billion people use as part of their daily lives is just crazy to think about, right? It's humbling and it's amazing.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
It's amazing. I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.
So I'm proud to say that we're working with the Waupaca Foundry. Barbara Hayes is one of the top coders at the Foundry, and so she's helped me learn a little bit more about coding and talk to kids about jobs that are involving coding. I also work with the tech teachers at the elementary school and some middle school tech teachers, and we are sharing resources. So in the summertime, when their tech stuff is sitting in a closet resting while the kids are off for vacation, they are sharing their resources with us at the library, so we can use more of their tools. And we work very closely together, so when they have a new technology they're introducing at school, they invite me over and I can take part in learning that new technology and offering it. So when we have an early dismissal day from school, or like this Friday when there's no school, there'll be all of these tech toys available for young people to come over and use. I do think what's really interesting is watching kids teach their parents this technology. And it's very, very fun. So I want to thank you for your time and attention tonight. If you have any questions about coding or want to play with any of these toys, they're actually tools, not toys. They look like toys, but they're tools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's the fastest I ever gave that presentation.
I think what we'll do is just process the rest of the council meeting, and then Sue maybe will stick around and answer any questions for people and let you play. I can see Dave Petey's chomping at the bit to get over there. So, sorry, Dave. All right, let's go. I guess we're ready to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Hagan, second by Keelan, that we adjourn till our next regular scheduled meeting, which is Tuesday, February 6th, 2018, subject to call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We are adjourned at 8:17 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for coming and attending. Drive safe on your way home.